spouses who married the cool girl, boy from your high school. What are they like now? My mom was the nerdy girl who got all the A's and had zero social skills, and somehow managed to start dating my dad, who was the popular, good-looking guy who everyone thought would peak in high school. She was actually advised by her family and friends that he wouldn't give her the future she was hoping for. They got married at 19, had me when they were 20, and while they were pretty broke the first few years of my life, he paid for my mom to attend law school, started his own business, and 25 years later, with 3 kids, they're still so in love and have a pretty cushy life. My dad actually met one of the loud voices who told my mom she was making a big mistake marrying him, and she had said how she always knew he would turn out well, which he found hilarious. He was the one who had the six-pack who all the girls swooned over, very popular. I was not. Saw him after just leaving HS and started going out, ended up getting married in our early 20s. God knows why. I guess we thought it was just what happened next. He never grew up. All he wanted to do was play online games, but I mean constantly. He would get in from work, walk straight past me to the spare room, straight online and play until the early hours, get a bit of sleep, go back to work, same thing, again and again. Never wanted to go anywhere, just wanted to game. Eventually, I gave him an ultimatum. He chose the game. From what I gather, he's remarried to someone else we went to school with and has 2 kids now. I was told she had to give him an awful lot of ultimatums before he eventually grew up. I sat next to the popular guy every day pretty much for 5 years, and I was so afraid of speaking to him. I'd watched him and his friends picking each other up and shoving the chosen one into lockers, or chasing each other round into a pile and throwing their shoes at each other. Typical school shit. They were rowdy and loud and intimidating, but he was the quiet yet seriously funny one, and I crushed on him hard for years. He remembers me as the little blonde girl who didn't speak to anyone, because I was so anxious all the time. He almost protected his sister from some assholes every break time, and she'd come to find him for safety from bullies. Should have spoken to him sooner when school finished, because we have the same music taste and we get on well enough now at 26 that we have a 6-month-old daughter together. My daughter from a previous relationship, and we just got engaged last weekend. I adore him. He's handsome, charming and funny, and I would do anything for this man as he would for me. I married the popular guy. We didn't go to the same schools, or even in the same city, but met when we were 30, extremely charismatic and likable, also used to having everything handed to him and done for him. He constantly spoke about how prior to me, he always was with hot girls and that he basically settled for me. I know I'm pretty, but I'm also overweight. He didn't seem to realize that while he was in shape in high school from playing sports, he ballooned up as an adult. We divorced earlier this year. He's already living with potential wife number 3, and me and his first wife have bonded over how terrible he treats his spouses. Yep, he's 35 and working on wife number 3. But he doesn't think he has behavior that needs to change because he spent his whole life hearing he was the best. We're divorced now, but my ex-wife was a popular cheerleader in high school. I didn't even know much about her younger years when we were dating. I remember cracking up when she busted out a yearbook to show me. She said she loved high school and had a great time, had lots of friends and ran with the popular kids. I was the total opposite. I hated those years of my life. I remember telling her that she probably would have disliked me if we had known each other as teenagers. I was a computer nerd that was into painting and graphic design. I was bullied a lot just for being socially awkward and super introverted. I was always carrying around and reading books instead of interacting with anyone. Anyway, the ex-wife isn't doing so well from what her current soon-to-be ex-husband told me. She had, and still has, a drinking problem when we divorced, but I got out relatively unscathed. She had a kid with this other guy a couple of years ago and ended up getting a DUI. Not her first. She lost her license and they ended up splitting up. Due to her alcoholism, he got an order of protection against her after several domestic disturbances where she got violent. He is still going through the court system, but he will likely get full custody of their kid because she has violated a couple orders of protection to come after him. She is on probation now too, which I think she has violated as well. Overall, her life sounds like a mess. I feel bad for the guy because he is essentially me if I had decided to stay with her. I feel bad for her too because I know a lot of her issues are due to her dysfunctional childhood. We tried therapy twice, but she was quite hostile and resistant to why. I notice a lot of they need to move on and leave that stuff in the past. Posts about spouses, be it football or whatever. Maybe that's when they felt most accepted, loved, and had the most people that cared about them, and now in the future they don't have that and keep thinking about the past as something they wish could have continued. Maybe it's not always them that has the issue with that, but rather those complaining about it. I married my best friend and we had practically everything in common. As time went on, she became completely different. Everything we had in common is no longer an interest to her, and I'm looked at as childish because I've continued to be myself and like what I like. I've watched her grow up and move on with life and lose everything that made her the person I knew back then, and I'm the one that's told I need to change. I'm the one trying to hold on to the past because that's when life was a joy. Don't always be so quick to dismiss those that reminisce because they could be lacking important closeness with people that you may not be providing. I can see what you're saying, but honestly, it depends, as everything does. If responsibilities remain the same, then sure, it's disappointing that a spouse who acted one way, enjoyed doing certain things, is no longer acting that way and those shared interests are gone. But at the same time, people do grow and change. That isn't a reason to demean someone whose interests didn't change though. That's wrong, and I'm sorry you have experienced that. However, if someone enjoys spending a lot of time doing something, but then decides to have a child or buy a house or a million other added responsibilities adults can have, and doesn't want to help their spouse with household duties or raising the children, it is a problem. Then, the spouse who doesn't want to share in the responsibilities will say their spouse changed, and they don't do what they used to / aren't the person with shared interests they fell in love with. But the truth is that the circumstances demanded a change of priorities. Then those responsibilities weren't shared, so they had no time to do the things they used to love, and grew to resent those activities because their spouse chose to continue overindulging in those activities instead of helping their partner. This still isn't a reason to demean a partner's interests. But in this situation it comes from frustration of not getting help and generally starting to resent the spouse. I'm not saying this is your situation, I'm just describing what I've seen sometimes when this is said. It leads to a lot of divorces. It also happens that people will pretend to enjoy things to get someone to marry them, and then change and become emotionally abusive to their partner gradually over time. And eventually, the abused spouse is broken down and miserable. It can be hard to find a good partner. I hope you are able to work things out and find happiness. Didn't marry her, but dated a bit. She was voted best smile and best athlete in HS. She was a swimmer, didn't work out and never really got any closure. Her friend did mention in passing it was because her parents didn't like her dating an Asian guy. But I'll never know for sure. Crazy thing is, I met her eventual husband in college. He sat next to me on the first day and had pics of her on his binder. He wanted to borrow my book to make photocopies of some chapters. I told him nah, I'm good. He was always the first one done on the tests but did pretty bad. He eventually stopped coming to class. She became a hairstylist and had 2 kids. She gained a lot of weight but still has a great smile. My husband was one of the core cool guys in high school in Alabama. He was the tall hot academic one, not the jock type like the rest. He eventually spent a year in England getting his MBA and left the South behind for an investment management job in Boston. He's adventurous and charismatic and much more of a goofball than I knew him to be when we met and started dating senior year. And most importantly, he is a great husband and caring daddy to our toddler. The others from that group are all back home, and aside from generally being fatter, no one seems to be doing terribly. Then again, it's hard to tell on Facebook. If you're out for a cool kid, I say chose the smart one. My now girlfriend was the most beautiful girl in our town. After meeting her and getting out in the world, I think she's the most beautiful woman on the planet. Immigrated from South America as a preteen. Also shares a name with a hot actress from the 90s. After hearing about her for years, I met her, and it was one of those rare occasions where the hype didn't or couldn't do her justice. Her personality is just as beautiful. She's multiracial and nobody gets her origins right, but I think the immigrant experience raised her differently than your standard hot girl. She is so humble, hardworking, and can't take a compliment. I'm so fucking lucky. My hubby was in the popular group. I was the exact opposite. We were in the same year but we never knew each other, but from what I've been told, he was exactly as you imagine the cool boy to be: parties, girls, alcohol, and everything that comes with that. Everyone always says they're glad I met him after school. We met after school finished, thankfully, or I probably wouldn't have liked him, because he randomly added me on Facebook. Fell in love quickly, being together 10 years, married 3, with a beautiful son. He is an incredible person, beautiful father, motivated, and runs a successful company he built from scratch. Never given me any reason to doubt him. Mom was the cool girl, still is, still literally gets stopped by strangers talking about how cool / pretty / whatever she looks, acts, but divorced. Husband cheated, and widowed. Second husband died, so never really managed to get a happily ever after in romance. I've only seen her as a grown-up, of course, but going by pictures plus what I remember as a kid, she hasn't changed all that much. I think sometimes she's too used to people being in her orbit and will get sad if something happens where she's not involved. Not overtly so, but you can see she's expecting everyone to always want her there. He drifted from job to job, always unbelievably great jobs for a college dropout. Even at one time a VP of a bank, and was recommended for bank president of the bank till he told me God called me to be a massage therapist at a casino. Always quit everything because he was smarter, knew better / wasn't appreciated enough. That included jobs, the Air Force, didn't make it through basic training, social clubs, friendships, then our marriage and practically fatherhood. Now, 15 years later, he's married to an alcoholic who was arrested for forging prescriptions and teaches, though not at reputable career colleges but out there of his home, massage therapy. He has no friends and has very little contact with one daughter and none with the other at all. He has spent his life thinking people owed him for the pleasure of being friends. He spent years telling me he was better / smarter / better looking than him, and I stayed way longer, 18 years, than I should have because I believed it. Whereas now, I am single by choice, have way more than dates than I want to accept. I have a small close-knit group of loyal friends. I have worked at the same school as a gifted teachers for 28 years and have my master's degree. I have a super close relationship with my 1 daughters and their husbands, and often babysit my 3 grandkids, 9, 3, 1. And my daughters refused to go on our yearly vacation to Walt Disney World Vacation without me. I told my daughters they should pick out the nerdy guys because they usually turn out to be very good looking when they are older, and they are the ones with the great jobs as adults. I wouldn't say either were nerdy during their dating time, but they weren't good looking / popular. Now one is a nurse practitioner and the other has a Monday to Friday truck driving job, and both do well. Even better, I brought my daughters up to be able to support their kids themselves. They are both nurse practitioners. My brother was the cool gay in high school. Even now, over 20 years later, he has what we call his fans that follow him everywhere. He has this posse built up of a rotating cast of best friends. He'll shine all his star power on his pick of the week, then move on to another one. He's very charismatic, good-looking, life of the party, so it's easy to navigate to him. He married the popular girl and his guy friends' wives are her friends. He can also be selfish, rude, dismissive and condescending. I tend to avoid him mainly because it's always a production with his gaggle of friends always around. She's still the nicest and gorgeous girl I ever met. Nothing changed. She is studying to be a pharmacist. That's something no one would guess, since she always loved history and her school didn't have biology or chemistry. We weren't from the same school, but she was one of the most popular girl from the school, neighborhood and university class. I met her on a graduation we both gave up. My mom was the cool girl all through high school, undergrad, grad school, but life didn't go that well. For most of her life, she had to be caring for someone in the family who was ill, and that took a huge toll on her. First it was her dad, then it was me. I had childhood illnesses, then her in-laws in quick succession, then her dad again, and finally she had to nurse my dad until he passed away from a terminal illness. She was meant to be social and have fun, and instead she was forced to be around sickness and sadness for her best years. But she is a very happy and mentally strong person in general who made the best of things. She hosted a lot of people and events. My house growing up was full of people visiting and having fun. She's very charming and easy to talk to, and has a lot of fans all the time. Though, my siblings and I find her social side rather annoying. She isn't like that with us, and she tells us her charming side is just an act, and the real her is the lady who is constantly critical of us for our own good. She likes having groupies hanging around, people who are happy to take her help and be grateful to her. She has very few friends who could be considered her equals. She also expects a lot from other people and is constantly disappointed. She wants to be the center of everything. She doesn't know to be a guest at anything. She somehow ends up running every event she's invited to. She sincerely believes she's helping, but it's just disrespectful sometimes, and when we tell her that, she doesn't get it. She likes to dominate everything and make decisions for everyone. We joke that if the Prime Minister was her friend, she'd somehow end up running the country for him. My brother was one of the hottest guys in high school and went on to be a model. He's still cool and hot to many, but now he's a bit fat. He's my brother, so one the hot part in my opinion, but women still swoon and he's so obnoxious. Think Matt Dillon, etc. He got dumped by his model 17 years younger wife for a 26-year-old. He has impossible standards and it's making him miserable. He's into these flashy, shallow women. Overall he's doing really well and his business is thriving. Not sure if he was necessarily cool, but my dad was prefect and head boy of his school, got along nicely with everyone and was responsible. They didn't have prom there, so that was the highest honor you could probably get. Worked hard and all, and had his classmates help to tutor him. His grades didn't end up great because he came in late to school once and got after-school detentions. He would go home late and finish homework overnight, then get up at the crack of dawn to wash his father's bus and be late to school again. more detentions. He dropped out and transferred to another school. Now he's a retired policeman who is working in security to send me and my siblings to school, does his best still. In my mom's view he's still handsome and she calls him a multitude of cutesy nicknames that he pretends to hate. Life is always as tough as normal but he keeps going.